everyone, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm coming at you with a seasonal TBR video. It's well established. I love a list. I love making monthly TBRs, yearly TBRs, but today I'm going to be chatting through my seasonal spring TBR. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the upcoming promise of a lot of rain. April showers bring lots of tears because a lot of the books on my TBR I feel like have quite a bit of emotional weight. Regardless though, I am really looking forward to a lot of the selects I picked and will definitely be reading them over the course of the next few months. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first part of this TBR is a doozy. These books are so heavy, but I feel like I just have to start with them and get them out of the way. Of course, I'm talking about Oathbringer and Rhythm of War. I have officially finished Words of Radiance and I am on the last two books that have officially been released for the Stormlight Archives, and these are definitely my major priorities for this spring season. I am so excited to finally get to Rhythm of War and to catch up with this series. These guys are long and they're very intense, but I'm ready for it. But completing and catching up on the Stormlight Archives is definitely something I want to finish before the end of this spring, especially because I have some rather grand plans for myself for summer and fall as it relates to starting some new epic series. With that in mind, I definitely just want to make sure this series is off my TBR list. I'm kind of talking like I'm not enjoying this immensely. This reread has been so much fun. I feel like I'm constantly catching and seeing new things. I'm in love with the characters, I'm in love with the story, I love the magic, and Brandon Sanderson just continues to just remind me why I love his books so much. But yeah, definitely Oathbringer and Rhythm of War are some major priorities for me this spring and will definitely be taking up quite a bit of my reading time and energy. I mean, look at these guys. I think they're both well over the 1,000 page mark. So with these, I will definitely be kept busy. From there, I have two additional longer fantasy reads I definitely want to read this spring. The first is the 20-man trilogy by Robin Hobb. I'm officially about 2/3 of the way through the first one, The Fool's Errand, and this is the third trilogy within Robin Hobb's like fantastical world, focusing in again on Fitz and the Fool about 15 years after the events of the Farseer trilogy. I've again already started this book and I'm absolutely loving it. So far it's proving to be a very emotional and intimate look on our main character Fitz and reminding us of his pain, his loss that occurred in the Farseer trilogy, but I'm hoping a new quest and a new journey between him and Fool, who is another one of my favorite characters that has existed within both trilogies I have read by Robin Hobb. I'm really looking forward to this. I feel like this might be a more quiet, focused, character-led quest, a little bit of a departure from the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which is such a huge multi-POV story, kind of focusing back in on some of our favorite characters, and an emotional, personal, and also fantastical journey. So far, it is excellent. I'm really invested and have already cried while reading this. Definitely want to read this and either finish the trilogy this spring or at least read one more book within the trilogy and obviously finish it at least at some point this year. And then another longer fantasy read I hope to read this spring is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. This is on my March TBR and one I actually hope to get to before the end of the month, so definitely hold me to that. But this is exciting to me because it's actually a standalone fantasy story and it centers on elemental magic, which is something I personally really enjoy. It is said to kind of have the darkness and intensity of the Poppy War with the magic system of Avatar: The Last Airbender, two series I love very, very much. So even if it has just sort of a hint of both of those vibes, honestly, say no more. I'm very, very sold. But this is a multi-POV story set in the Kaigenese Empire, which is a really powerful land that is really known for its fighting ability. We follow a young man who's grown up there and has really dedicated himself to learning his family's craft in fighting. However, when he encounters a foreigner from the outside, curtain has kind of begun to be pulled back on what he has always thought he's known about his life as well as the world around him. We also follow this boy's mother, who has been harboring a lot of secrets herself, and I think she believes to begin to share those secrets with her son. I'm really intrigued by this. I hear the magic, the combat is excellent, and in general, I'm just kind of curious to read more standalone fantasy. I'm obviously generally partial to really long fantasy stories, but I actually do enjoy a standalone every once in a while. Some of my favorite fantasy books themselves are actually standalone, so I'm just kind of curious to see how this unfolds. Obviously, this is very hyped. I've heard excellent things about this, so I feel like I'm going to love this, but this is definitely one I plan to read this spring as well. Next up, I have a more intense sci-fi story I want to pick up, and that is A Memory Called Empire by Arcady Martin. This is the 2020 Hugo Award winner, and I have been reading more sci-fi in 2020, but a lot of it has been Earth set. So I really want to continue to challenge myself and actually read sci-fi that is away and in its own like world and universe, kind of separate to Earth and humanity. In a lot of ways, it actually appeals to me more because in some aspects that makes it very much like fantasy, its own world, its own rules, its own creatures, its own political systems, its own like literal science, like how gravity works, for example. All of those world building components really appeals to me, so I'm excited to kind of encounter that in a more space sci-fi setting, if that makes sense. And this is actually a debut in a first book to a new series. And in the story, we follow our main character, Mahit Dazmir, who is an ambassador, and she's really excited to kind of start her career and take up her new post. As she travels though to the new capital city of where she's supposed to begin working, she arrives to only realize that her predecessor was killed, and no one there will admit how or why, or even if they were murdered, and she has a feeling that she might be next. Now Mahit is kind of thrown in the center of a bunch of politics, trying to solve this murder and save herself. This sounds really interesting and very intense. It kind of reminds me of some of the political thriller elements that I really enjoyed in City of Stairs, kind of mixed with a sci-fi fantastical setting. So I just have a feeling I'm really going to love this. Obviously this has been very lauded, has won lots of awards, so I just feel like this is going to be one that's going to be really hard to put down, and also just a good introduction to the space opera genre in general. The next two books I'm actually still deciding between, but it's basically coming from the realization I've never actually read a Kazuo Ishiguro book. I own 4 of his works on my shelf, so I really want to make sure to rectify this this spring and at least read one. I'm currently deciding between 2 of his works, the first one being Never Let Me Go, and one that I've owned for so long, and I've actually never even seen the movie because I wanted to read the book first, Classic Reader Problem, and then the other is Clara and the Sun, which is his newest release and one that I just recently got this past month. Both of these really call out to me in a variety of ways. From a pure synopsis standpoint, I would say Clara and the Sun is calling out to me more, but obviously Never Let Me Go is so famous. I feel like I might want to start with that one first. That being said, let me know down below if you feel like you have a strong opinion of where you think the best starting place is with Kazuo Ishiguro, because I'm all ears. I'm looking for recommendations, but a little more context about what these books are about. The first one, Clara and the Sun, is his newest release, and in this we follow our main character Clara, who is an artificial friend, and from her place within the store she has been observing her whole existence, the interactions of humans, and has also been dreaming of the day when she's finally selected and taken home. However, when she's finally kind of presented this possible opportunity, I think it kind of transforms her life forever. This is said to be inspired by our rapidly changing modern world, and also to try to answer the question, what is the true meaning of love? The aspect of the story that really catches my eye is the narrator. It kind of gives me her vibes. I love this kind of artificial intelligence. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be human? Like, all of these things really intrigue me. Of course, there is also Never Let Me Go, which is about a group of friends that were really close at this prestigious boarding school, and now many years later they've kind of re-entered their lives again. I hear this is really beautiful and just like really well told and mesmerizing, and I think has elements of fantasy as well. So let me know what you think, which of these 2 books I should read. I also own The Remains of the Day and The Buried Giant, so there's other options as well. The next book that's on my list is a bit of a lighter option, and one that I'm just so thrilled to pick up, and that is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. This is the first book to a new middle grade fantasy series that I have just heard so many amazing things about, and truly I just think I'm going to love. And this follows our main character Amari, who has never stopped believing her older brother Quentin is alive, no matter what the police try to tell her. So when she discovers a ticking briefcase in her brother's closet with an invitation to him for him to enter the trials for the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, she decides to accept the invitation on his behalf in hopes of this will actually lead her to finding her missing brother. Now Amari is confronted with fairies, magic, aliens, and all sorts of supernatural creatures, and is thrown headfirst into a set of trials to enter this secret organization, and has to go against children who have been preparing for it for her entire life. This just sounds magical and wonderful and full of whimsy. I love the trials element, and in general, again, I just love middle grade fantasy. It's one of my all-time favorite genres, and this just sounds like an excellent new series out there, and I'm just so looking forward to reading it. And the last 2 books that are on my spring TBR are 2 options I feel like are going to make me cry. The first one is a very hyped book, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is a beloved story for a variety of reasons, and one I have just recently recently picked up, but I finally feel like I'm ready emotionally to read this story, as I do feel like it's going to destroy me. I'm actually a really big fan of Greek classics. I had to read a lot of them for a variety of classes in college, so actually I'm really excited to re-encounter the story of Achilles in a more humanized and romanticized way. Particularly, to my understanding, this follows the tragic fate and story of Achilles, and it also follows the love story between him and Patroclus. This I feel like is going to be excellent, and I also own her other story, Circe, so in general I'm just looking forward to finally picking up a Madeline Miller book and also be destroyed by the love and life of Achilles. And the very last book on my spring TBR is A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. I still haven't read a book by Frederick Bachman, and it bothers me. I also really want to read Beartown, which I know is being adapted into a show. I had this, I think, on my January TBR, and I just didn't get to it, and it's been haunting me ever since. So this is really to say, at some point this spring, I want to read one of this author's works because I do really feel like I'm going to love them. I hear they're emotional and just well-plotted stories about humans and love and life and family and all of those things I tend to really enjoy. But particularly, A Man Called Ove is about a grumpy old man that really likes to be left alone. He follows strict routines and has a very short fuse, and he doesn't like anyone really bothering him, and that includes anyone in the neighborhood. However, when a new family moves in next door to him, he begins to form a bond with them and also their children. I think this is just going to be a wonderfully heartwarming story about like second chances and like redefining yourself and who you are, and also just kind of like a grumpy old man like learning to love again. I feel like this is going to have great humor, great family elements, and just community, and I'm hoping this brings a smile to my face and doesn't destroy me too much. But in general, Frederick Bachman is just an author I have been wanting to read for years, and I'm just going to try to make sure that happens this spring. Alrighty guys, that is my spring TBR. Let me know down below some books you hope to get to this season, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon.